working too. And no matter which way a state votes, we're all still Americans in this large country of 300 million people. So here today to bring you America's perspectives are Matt Curran, Javen Polson, Gabriela Escudero, and Michelle Ferretta on Coast to Coast Conversations. Yes, sirree. Welcome in, everybody, to Coast Conversations. We'll start off this week. We've got a lot of people flip-flopping all over the place, a little bit on both sides. I figured we'd start off talking about the pro-life movement because if you saw over the weekend, Melania Trump is coming out pro-choice in her new recent book, kind of after her husband's come a little bit more to the middle. You had the flip-flop of Kamala policy issues already. And really just talking about like where's the pro-life movement going from here, no matter who wins, how do they move past trying to change hearts and minds and maybe even the state legislature. So I'm going to play a really quick clip and then we'll go around the horn here. This is the Melania Trump pro-choice coming out.
Individual freedom is a fundamental principle that I safeguard. Without a doubt, there is no room for compromise when it comes to this essential right that all women possess from birth: individual freedom. What does my body, my choice really mean?
So this will be in Melania's memoir, supposedly. You know, to me, the pro-life movement, we got to change hearts and minds first before you can change legislation. You see that in Ohio and Kansas. But as a pro-lifer myself, it is disappointing to see, and almost even for this election, unnecessarily, some of the Trump folks coming out as pro-choice. Michelle, I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, I early on in my life, I was a big pro-choice person. I was a young single mom, and I was very much so for all of that, my body, my choice, that sort of thing. But as I've gotten older and my daughter is now 23 years old, I've become, pretty pro-life. We don't protect those that don't have a voice. And for Melania, I truly think that her heart is in the right place. She's one of those that has gotten a bad rap for who her husband is, some of the things that she's done early on in her life. But I truly, I feel like I can relate to her, because when going back to my young adult life, I was a wild child, and you grow and you learn from those experiences, and the people that I talk to, that say that they're pro-choice, at the end of the day, they're truly not. When you start to talk to them a little bit more about where their cutoff line is, the majority of people that I talk to think that there should be some sort of cutoff. In Wisconsin here, there's a 5 month. So after 5 months, even you can abort up until 5 months. But for me personally, we don't do enough discussion about after birth. For those programs of those women struggling, I don't think that they have enough information of resources, that there is things to help them on the back end after birth. And if you talk to women that have had abortions, the majority say that they may have changed their mind had they known about the different programs that are there afterwards. I don't think, having the government as the nanny state, it's supposed to be a crutch, not a hammock. And there are programs and there are organizations that will help you and help women. I have a big blowout in my younger years with a girlfriend who had an abortion. She regrets it now. She's got two beautiful girls now. And her and I talk to this day that she regrets it, and she was young and she had made a bad decision, and uh, made a bad, a bad choice of the father figure, and that was why she chose to abort it. But she truly regrets it now to this
Mhm.
day, and she wishes she could go back, because even as an adult, as a 40 something year old, some of her arguments of she couldn't afford it. She can't
Mhm.
afford it now. The two that she has now. So how would life be different? And you
And,
know,
and what you're saying is kind of a little bit of what JD Vance was trying to get to, as far as being sympathetic to women during that debate. Javen, you spoke a little bit about that last week with you and Gabriella on the show, and some of the clips. Speak to us on, it seems like the Republicans, whether it's JD Vance, Donald, Melania, Tulsi Gabbard's pro-choice, you got the pro-life wing. It seems like the Republicans are just kind of hitting everyone at every angle on the abortion issue, except the extreme, you know, 9 months, while the Democrats are just kind of camping out there at the 9 month thing.
Yeah, no, definitely right. And to what Michelle was saying at first, I mean, we hear too many stories like your friend who regret it and who got it, but they regret it. There's not enough information out there about the procedure and the psychological effect it actually has on women and all parties, all stakeholders in that situation. But I just want to start on a more lighter note, saying how lucky we are to have first ladies. I mean, from Eleanor Roosevelt to Jackie to Melania to even Jill at some point. I mean, we're just so lucky. Doug might ruin it for us. We'll see. But I mean, we're just so lucky to have that. But yeah, I mean, in the debate with JD Vance and Waltz, I mean, JD Vance said it perfectly. We have the Republican Party has lost trust with women when it comes to this topic, because when we come at it, we come at it as a as a side of we're blaming the women, which we aren't. We clearly say we don't blame the women. It's the fact that it's these, I hate to say it, but these vultures in the abortion industry that are going after these women to get abortions instead of educating them on the other alternatives. Now the Republicans and both sides need to do a better job at foster care. We need to do a better job at teaching them, maybe I don't want to say too young, but teach them at a pretty young age the consequences of having a child and having an abortion. Definitely have an abortion, because I mean you're killing a life. I mean, you have to understand what you're doing. It's murder. Fortunately, I live in Louisiana, one of the most pro-life states in the country, so that discussion it's had a good bit, but not as much as somewhere like Wisconsin might, because I know that there's a lot of more independents there, people who want different things. I mean, I'm personally pro-life. I do believe in some exceptions, especially for the woman's life. And to bring it back to Melania and her viewpoint, it's definitely interesting that she would come out as pro-choice, especially at this
Mhm.
point in the race. I mean, you have to ask, was it political, or was it just her, hey, I wrote a book, I gotta talk about it, I'm just gonna do it? And I really want to know what was President Trump's reaction to it. I mean, knowing him, I feel like it was more like she can do what she wants, okay, that's all on her. I imagine his staff's like, well, maybe we should wait till the actual election, you can post that. But I also think, I mean, we all know that every first lady has an initiative she goes after. So maybe this is kind of her stepping stone. And if Trump gets another term in office, maybe her initiative might be talking about abortion. I know some may say that's kind of out of character for a first lady to have such a polarizing initiative. But remember, Hillary Clinton had healthcare, I believe. So it's so it's
Mhm.
so it's not that unprecedented for a first lady to have such a polarizing
Yeah,
initiative.
you bring up a good point. I didn't think about that. Maybe this could be a stepping stone to where she says, "Yeah, look, my body, my choice. But if you do keep it, we need to kind of have an idea of like taking care of the women." And I think that kind of goes to the broader sense of no matter who wins, whether it's Harris or Trump, the pro-life movement needs to do a better job of explaining and working with people on the ground, changing hearts and minds. That's
Yes.
the key. That's the key right there, because
Yes.
changing hearts and minds will work upstream into politics. You can't, just because you ban something doesn't mean it's going to stay that way if the culture doesn't want it. So you have to go and sort of change the culture's mindset. You know, so like you were talking about organizations, Michelle. I actually am about to rejoin a maternity home board, which takes care of primarily single pregnant women who decide not to have abortions, and that we get funding from private donors, from the government maternity homes. I think there should be more maternity home funding for these things, sort of for to kind of help people who fall flat on their feet, not to abuse it, but so they don't choose abortion. And you can see the sort of the flourishment of families that keep going. I will tell you this: I've ran into some people who will tell me, and I ran into this guy in Missouri actually over the summer who told me, it's not always the women that get the abortion. Sometimes it's the men. He knew many guys that worked at prisons, got the women prisoners pregnant, and then would drive them to an abortion clinic and get the abortion so they wouldn't lose their job. Is that a woman's choice or is that a man's choice? Sometimes the man is the one pressuring. Sometimes it's the parents pressuring. Sometimes it's the boyfriend pressuring. And it's not always economic based. It's because they want the option so they don't have to bounce. So there needs to be heart and minds. And I think the number one way to change hearts and minds is to sort of go, I hate to say it, you have to go in a more religious fashion. You can't, the more religious people are, the more they're understanding and connecting. I think personally to the person, to the individual. Science can only get you so far with so many people, but I think, and it doesn't matter what religion. It could be Buddhist, Catholicism, Jewish. There, I believe they all. If you notice anything about all of the major religions, Muslims even, there's always a connection point to life and then God. So if you go into any religion, I'm happy because that means you're getting closer to understanding that life, it comes from God. That's my personal belief. That's the number one way you can change hearts and minds. Now, to go to the opposite end, Kamala Harris did media blitz this week, and I found this clip funny. We're going to go through a couple of her clips. This is a good segue from sort of the abortion thing. You guys might have seen it. She was on some sort of I don't even know what it was called. Like
Is it the Call Me Daddy podcast?
Call me some sex, yeah. Call Me Daddy
Call Me
podcast,
Daddy.
whatever. So she's talking about tampons and going into reproductive. I'll play the clip and then we'll get the reaction here.
I have seen girls on the street walk up to men and be like, do you know where a tampon goes? Do you know how many tampons we use? Do you even know do you know what a X or Y or Z is of a part of our, and they don't know the answer.
I was the first vice president or president to ever in office go to a reproductive health care clinic ever.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that, but I guess that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. To your point.
Now, I just got to say, I think it's wild going to the extreme left over here that Kamala is bragging like, oh, I'm the first vice president to ever go to an abortion facility. The Democrats used to be safe, legal, rare. There and that safe, legal, rare basically was an understanding that there was a baseline of like abortion is bad. Like there was an understanding like abortion, and now Kamala's over here trying to be like, shout your abortion, show your abortion. I mean, live stream your abortion. I mean, it's horrible stuff. Michelle, what do you think about this? And do you think Javen and I know what tampons are?
I will say, Matt, you do. Javen, only in theory.
I just know it to stop a nosebleed.
Okay.
Actually, that's kind of funny. Funny story that you had mentioned that back in high school. I'm totally going to go off script here. We introduced somebody on a cheerleading trip. We used to go down to Six Flags and work in order to go to nationals and things like that. We would fundraise by working down at Six Flags. So we were on the bus and we're driving, and exactly that happened. Somebody jumped over the bus seat, one of the fellas that was with us, and only the ladies had tampons. So he, shoved that tampon right up his nose to be able to do that.
There you go, Javen.
As far as what I feel about that, I don't believe it. I don't believe that she's the first vice president to visit an abortion clinic. I mean, and why would you be proud of something like that? That's not something that you would want, I would think, because as you said, and to your point, Matt, it was safe. It was low low numbers, things like that. And now it's just become almost boutique-like in the fact of like, oh, let's just, have an afternoon tea and an abortion. and it shouldn't be that way, because have we really fallen that far that we can't love our fellow man, love our babies, love everything, that it become a proud moment? I can't get behind it. I really can't. And it goes back to the whole argument of the programs that women need, that will help us get through pregnancy, that will help us get through the short term thereafter. And it goes back to, Kamala Harris's $6,000 child care tax credit. You know, well, it's great on its face because childcare is insanely expensive. I pay like $1,200 a month for daycare for two kids, and it's insane. But at the same time, I still don't think that I should be paying for other people in that child care tax credit. I think we need to be able to find a common solution that isn't going to take away from those that don't have children. And having this whole abortion on demand is not a badge of honor. I don't know. Javen, I'm sure you know what a tampon is.
Uh,
You, you know, eh?
yes, I mean, I grew up with all women and girls in my household, so of course I
Yeah.
had my run-ins and go in the store, had some in the grocery cart. So yeah, I know they are. But I mean, to that clip that we just saw, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't brag about it either. Her being the first VP, if true, I wouldn't be too surprised because she's the first woman vice president, but also she's definitely not the first person to assume vice presidency in a abortion clinic. I know there's been a lot of Republicans. I don't want to name one because I'm gonna get it incorrectly. But there's one vice president I know in particular who was outside protesting an abortion clinic. It was one of the recents. I don't remember who it was though. Recents in like before Mike Pence. Actually, he probably did. Honestly, he probably went to abortion clinic. I'm sure he did. How socially conservative he is, but yeah, I certainly wouldn't brag about it either. And kind of Matt, kind of going back when you talked about how we need to focus on abortion on a more religious base, I almost pushed back on you because my mind went to Christianity, but when you clarified of all religions, I think that's a fair point. When people ask me about my abortion stance and basically my social stance, I love to think that it's from a secular stance that has no religious basis in it. But I mean, come on. I mean, the idea of life is sacred is a religious thing. It shouldn't be. It should be just a common sense thing, which I think it is
Right.
too. But I mean, of course, I think "Thou shalt not kill" probably plays some role in me believing life is precious and we shouldn't kill it at any stage of its life. But yeah, you're right to that point. And if we just come at it that way of, okay, do you cherish your life? Yes. Then why should no one else cherish their own life? Why shouldn't they have the opportunity to have life that you have or the opportunity it can have?
Well, I was saying more even just separate from government. Like just as an individual, when
You,
you're in
yeah.
your non-governmental groups, doing whatever, your Rotary Club, whatever, you know, trying to get to a more religious society in general. I mean, the people attending church and synagogues on Sundays are declining overall, and I think that I think cause and effect. The less people that are religious in our country tend to you you have more embracement of abortion and some of these other
Yeah.
sinful things. But if you want to change the state mandates for banning things in which they can legally do things, right? Then you don't get to just do it but you need it to flow from culture, and you have to change the culture. And how do you change the culture? You got to be more religious. You got to grow your family to be more religious. You got to change your community to be more religious and set a good example to be religious. You can't force it through government. Government is not I'd say 9 times out of 10 it's not the way to push a socially your social agenda. It works more on the left than the right. When the
Yeah.
left pushes their social agenda from government, it tends to flow down a lot better than when the right does it.
Yeah.
um
But yeah, Matt, and to your point too, when you talk about government and you talk about this abortion, and they talk about, Roe versus Wade being in the Constitution, but if you go back and you look at the Constitution the way it was written, they want to recodify this, to bring back Roe. When you start to amend the Constitution, if you look at those different things, it doesn't have actual pigeonholed classes. It doesn't say, um, you know, only women XYZ or only Catholics XYZ, while it was based off of religion. But if you have to redo the Constitution to pigeonhole a specific class or a specific religion, then you lose the whole identity of our Constitution because of those founding papers. Each one of those are in a general term. All men are created equal, you know, and
Mhm.
I really think that I really enjoy that it went back to the states because it gives us at the state level as opposed to the federal level and trying to change this whole thing for a small group of people.
Yep.
Correct. When it goes to the states, I look at that as, hey, now it's up to your state cultures to be able to do stuff. So Ohio, they did something. I mean, they banned it. I personally agree with that, but I politically didn't agree with it because I knew that it was going to be a backlash. Turns out I was correct. There was a political backlash. Now abortion is enshrined into the Ohio State Constitution. If you were an Ohio State legislator, I would have said temporarily repeal the snapback law, try to change your culture in Ohio to be more pro-life, change hearts and minds, and then inch your way back to a ban. I mean, the left has done a great job of changing cultures and inching the way to 9 months, like in Minnesota, where you could be a child born from a botched abortion and then be executed. They had 8 of those happen from an amendment that Tim Walz signed, by the way. Tim Walz is an extremist on abortion.
And can I let you? There are two very specific cases in 2021 that the abortion it went to term. It was a viable baby, and they let it die.
Mm-hmm.
2 of them. The other 3 in 2021. There are 5 in that one specifically.
Mm-hmm.
3 of which were terminal. Were terminal infants that weren't going to make it anyway, but 2 were viable babies. 2 were beautiful babies that are no longer here, and they just let them go.
There's stories. You can go to Students for Life of America that people who've survived botched abortions, that police officers will go behind, the whole crying babies in a dumpster behind abortion clinics, and they'll be able to save them. And so for the left to sit here and say, well, that's just not a viable thing, which, by the way, it's sort of a cause and effect, right? Like you get rid of Roe versus Wade, it also snaps back to 9 months in some of these states. So I think the life movement moving forward has to fight the idea of Kamala Harris, and this, and there's so much we could talk about this clip, just the gender divide between men and women, but the idea that she could go into abortion clinics as the first vice president, and Melania Trump changing her positions just shows where our politics are and where the pro-life movement really needs to continue to go.
But if you think
After
about
the
it,
election,
too,
no
one
matter,
last
no matter
thing,
who.
Matt, before
Yeah,
we
say
move
one
on.
last thing, and then we'll play some other clips here.
Before we move on, the whole fact of is that when we're out and we talk to our fellow man, we're not talking about abortion. We're talking about the issues at play. And I don't truly understand why they are holding on to that issue on that side as their election piece when we have, skyrocketing inflation, and we have other things that are policies that we need to work on and that need to change.
I
I can't wrap my head around it. And
I'll-
Javen, why do you think that is?
That's a great question. That's a question.
I wanted to catch you off guard, real quick.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I'll make a comment. Look at the podcast she went on. Single women. That's it. Those are the only people that care about it primarily. Who's like a top issue. Yeah. Hoorah. Married women who have kids. Again, I go back to the men and women sports thing. Single women don't give 2 craps about it. Like they think it should be a thing. Married women don't care about it. It's like 70% of people don't want it, but the highest percentage, it's about 50-50, is single women. So
Now,
I
Matt,
think it's that same group on abortion. Single. I mean, look at the podcast she's on. This is primarily a single ladies podcast.
now
But
I'll say before we move on, I do want to quantify the election when it comes to your point with the single women. I know there was a poll from Wall Street Journal last August that said that currently Kamala is leading Trump 13 percentage points among women. and 33% of those polled said that abortion is the reason why they're going to Kamala, and that is actually the biggest margin when it comes to any issue of why they're supporting a candidate over another candidate. And that's something that I think Trump needs to watch out for.
It's crazy.
That's true. All right. Well, here we go. This is about Kamala talking about 50K deductions in business.
Which is why another thing that I'm really focused on is small businesses and startups, and giving startups a $50,000 tax deduction, because right now it's $5,000 and you can't start up any small business with $5,000.
See, for me, I listened to this clip. The average Joe who may not be savvy enough in taxes may think, oh, this is great, she's going to 50,000, but 50,000 deduction, which means you have to spend 50,000 or more. So let's say you spend $100,000 to start up a bar. Great. I deduct $50,000. I'm not getting this as a credit. I just did to deduct that from my taxes, which might save me like, I don't know, $2,000-3,000. You know what I mean? Like,
No, yeah, you're
she
right.
acts like it's this grand thing. I mean, now if she said credit, that'd be different, and I would be opposed to $50,000 in credit.
I would say something else that we need, that kind of thinking about her 60-minute interview, but that interview as well, that she didn't talk about, is the 2017 Jobs Act and tax cuts. In that, there was something called the qualified business tax deduction, which allowed pass-throughs. So that was mostly like LLCs, sole proprietors. That allowed those to deduct 20% of their business income into their income tax, because under the tax law, under the Tax Act, there was no corporate tax for small businesses. Now, she has not said if she'll keep those deductions, but she has said she wants to get rid of this of the 2017 Jobs Act. We'll just say the Trump tax cuts, because that's what they are. So she says she wants to support small businesses, but when she talks about this $50,000, this is specifically for startups and not for the businesses that are already established. So she hasn't said how she's going to solve that problem. She's only talking about the startups. So it's really important, and I'm going to stay strong on this qualified tax deduction, because it's so important for these pass-through businesses, these small businesses that she's so worried about. They need to keep these tax deductions.
100% agree. Javen, I couldn't have said it better myself. But you also think about the startup and the small businesses in the cost factor of it. Like you had said, Matt, you have to spend $50,000 to start a business. Who is actually starting a business right now, and who has that sort of capital gain to be able to start that business even at the $50,000 mark? You know, it costs quite a bit. And then on top of that, all of the overhead costs with the inflation, and you talk about the energy. So if you're writing out that business plan, how do you account for the future increases that are coming, the future things, and you talk about the Trump tax plan, it goes away next year. So we're at that cliff right now. So for me, it's one of those. And then I also don't trust, you think about, you think about the starting a business. Okay, you're going to spend, 55,000 only to write off the 50,000. So you really only, the people that aren't doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
But really it's who's starting a business these days? Is there new business growth? Or we just got the jobs report number, and they're supposed to be amazing, but we all know that next month they'll readjust them, like they have done with every jobs report for the last 4 years, where the numbers are not going to be as shiny as they show. It's really not. Those are bounce back jobs that have been recovered from COVID, but nobody's starting a business these days. My husband's part of a small business family of electricians, and they're barely scraping by. I don't know who would do it.
Yeah, you guys bring up a good point. So that I didn't even think of. So yeah, the deduction is just a one-time startup, and so year two comes around. It's that tax rate, and Donald Trump was recently on the Dave Ramsey show or doing an interview, and he was talking about wanting to lower because right now the corporate tax rate, it was like 38% when he took office. The tax cuts brought it down to 21%. He says he wants to bring it lower to 15%. Okay. Kamala, we don't know where she wants to go, but she's going to let it expire. I think it goes up to 28% on the corporate side. Those might be permanent, or she at least expressed some sort of expression to go back to 28%. So that's a big deal. I think we should have a bigger talking point about. You're talking about a 13% difference on corporations if you file, whether you're LLC or whatever. That could affect whether you pay your employees more, if you get more money, if you want to invest in something, how you operate your business. It's going to be a lot more unstable. It's not just going to be corporate America in your in your Fortune 500 over here in the stock market that's affected by this. This is so many people file as corporations. All right, just to keep going with it, then the sort of last one of her media blitz this week. I did not do any of the 60-minute interview, Javen, just because that's been overkilled everywhere. So we're gonna hit the other stuff. But this one I found really interesting. And before I say anything, I'll just play it and then we'll talk about it.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's trying to sell herself as a change agent on one hand. Hey guys, I'm new, I'm different. Turn the page. Woo, yay. But also, yeah, turn the page. But then simultaneously, I've done everything with Joe Biden, but I'm not with Joe Biden. It doesn't seem like she can get her story straight, Michelle.
No. And I am here for it because I thoroughly enjoy her trying to talk out of both sides of her mouth, where she's trying to say that, well, I, on day one, am going to do X, Y, and Z. I love that she agrees to, like, yes, the cost of food is too high. Well, who's been vice president for the last 4 years? Well, the vice president doesn't have to do with much. And then Biden coming out and saying how, well, him and Harris has been at the forefront and she's been this and she's the one that's been leading us on that. And it's kind of, it almost seems like a brother and sister fighting in the fact that they're trying to get more attention. And I really think that Joe was a little salty. We'll just say he's a little salty that he was pushed out.
You think?
And I think that he's trying to kind of play nice because it's Harris, and of course he wants a Democrat to win, but also at the same time, kind of, death by 1,000 paper cuts. He takes those little backhanded shots at her that the rest of us are seeing. I don't trust her. Javen.
I'm kind of looking at her blitz these past few weeks. I mean, you look at where she's at. Call Me Daddy, popular among young women. The View, popular among older females. She went on Stephen Colbert, popular among young men, and Howard Stern, popular among 3/4 of males. I mean, you can kind of see where she's going with this and what she's doing. What I would caution her and her team is that they're doing it so late, is that they're not giving themselves enough time to actually recover if she slips up. And we know her and her VP are great at that. So one thing I'd caution them is just be aware that you're giving yourselves like less than 30 days late, 30 days out of the election, and you're finally talking to the media. And when you talk to them, you're still not giving straight answers, and people aren't getting the answer that they need from you, that they want to hear from you. But she has a front lawn. She has a well manicured front lawn in her middle class neighborhood. I was saying middle class. And she has a Glock. I learned she has a Glock.
Which
is just a brand.
Is illegal in California.
That's what I thought. I didn't research it, but that's what I thought.
As somebody who is a firearms instructor and certified, she helped write those laws to ban the gun that she claims she owns.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
So before we get no, you're good. Before we get to the next clip, I just want to make one comment about this. That I think the Trump campaign, I won't say it's political malpractice, it's just politically, you're not taking this clip enough and blasting it everywhere. For example, I would take this clip. Yes, I'm tied at the hip with Joe Biden, whatever she said, and then immediately play the Afghan withdrawal, because she said she was the last person in the room to sign off on that withdrawal, which was horrible. It left billions and billions of dollars worth of equipment for the terrorists to take over. They're now using them against us. Okay. And our defense budget, some people say it's over bloated. Okay, sure. Yeah. But if you're still going to spend the money on the equipment, let's not leave it to the bad guys. Let's take it home with us. There was no plan. So she now owns that. She owns the Afghan withdrawal, where she was trying to sort of run away from it before and split the baby. And I'm with Biden on this, but not with this. She owns that. That clip should be viraled with everything. Bidenomics, whatever you want to call it. Everything that Biden's touched that has gone to hell needs to be tied to her in a commercial with that. Okay. Now, speaking of hell and things that are tied to her, this is her directly intervening in something that she doesn't have any business to do. So, and Michelle touched on it a little bit with, Biden throwing 1,000 paper clips or whatever, cutting her with the paper, whatever you said, with the paper, 1,000 paper cuts. That's what it was. There you go.
That's by 1,000 cuts.
Cut that by 1,000 cuts. So Joe Biden's doing FEMA. Okay. He's been doing FEMA for the last, 4 years, managing it. Hurricanes come through, calling the governors, the whole 9 yards. Here's Ron DeSantis talking about rejecting Kamala Harris's call. I thought it was brilliant the way he handled it.
She has no role in this process. And I've been dealing with these storms in Florida under both Trump and Biden. Neither of them ever politicized it. And in fact, all the storms I've dealt with under this administration, although I've worked well with the president, she has never called in Florida. She has never offered any support. So what she's doing is she's trying to inject herself into this because of her political campaign. So as the governor here who's leading this, I don't have time for those games. I don't care about her campaign. Obviously, I'm not a supporter of hers, but she has no role in this process. And so I'm working with the people I need to be working with. We're leveraging the resources I need to be leveraging. And for her to try to say that my focus should be on catering to her rather than worrying about my own people just shows she doesn't understand what it means to respond to these natural disasters.
It just shows that Kamala is a political novice. I'll even give Biden credit because he was talking about, hey, I've called Ron DeSantis. He has everything he needs. We're on the same page. Ron DeSantis even giving Joe Biden some kudos. So there's some bipartisanship there. Now, some people will say Ron DeSantis should have taken the call and he's the one calling us in division. Okay, well, it's been 3.5 years and Kamala's not called her, and she's the sitting vice president who's tied at the hip with Biden, hasn't called him once. He doesn't have time to talk about unnecessary crap, political crap, because he just wants to deal with lives. I thought this was the right move, also politically genius, and Biden later was asked about it, and he just said, look, I've called the governors between me and the governor. And so Biden and DeSantis on the same page. Kamala Harris kicked to the side by both President Biden and Governor DeSantis. Javen?
This is why I love DeSantis, because he says it how he feels, how he thinks. Mm-hmm. Besides, old girl, he's the one that got away. I mean, he really is. I watched that interview of the interview, but watched it live today on Squawk Box. He was on Squawk Box, did a great job explaining it. Now, I'm going to say something. Well, actually, let's preface with this. John Adams said, I am the vice president. That means nothing but everything. What I'm about to say, that was in the
bucket
quote.
Of spit.
Say again?
He said he called it a bucket of spit.
Exactly. And in saying that, he meant the vice president does nothing. However, they have the opportunity to become president, which he did and Kamala was trying to do. I'm going to say something that's going to be very popular with our Republicans friends. Is we can't pick and choose whenever she's responsible, not responsible. DeSantis saying that she has no role in this, but then at the same time saying she has a role in the economy, it doesn't jive with me. It could be true. It could be true.
But she just said in the last clip that she agreed with everything the Biden administration did. She couldn't name one thing she differs from Joe Biden. Oh. That's where I'm saying is she's tied at the hip with them.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to argue. I mean, I don't expect the assistant coach to argue with the head coach. That's not their job. Their job is to say yes, sir, to the head coach, and that's it. If you don't, you will get fired. That's just what happens to you. You can get reprimanded. Mike Pence paid the price for it. Thank God he did. But I mean, I just don't like that we're that now he's saying, okay, she has no role in this, but at the same time, she has a role in the economy, just not my thing. Now, one thing that Ron DeSantis did say that I'm glad you said that was when we talk about FEMA and their lack of response, is what he said was FEMA plays a supporting role. The states, they take the lead on all of this effort. So we hear a lot about how FEMA's not doing their part, how their lack of resources. Ron DeSantis has not come out and said that whatsoever. He has said that FEMA has given him resources. They have done what they need to do. And Florida rightfully is taking the leading role, because if we are pro small government, we need to let the small government take the lead in this initiative.
Well, I'll say one thing before I go to Michelle. I just looked it up, and I do think this is important.
Okay.
Kamala Harris has the most tie-breaking votes in history as any vice president. She's broken 33. John Calhoun comes in second. I would say arguably the most famous vice president in historical. If you ever go down to South Carolina, you'll know about that. But she's broken the most consequential Inflation Reduction Act, CHIPS Act, spend. All those spending bills have the 8.8 trillion all came through her.
Yeah.
Now, so I'll push back on you on the economy one, because all the Bidenomics agenda, she signed off on it, Javen.
Yeah. I mean, I'll ask you, did you really expect her not to vote with Biden? I mean, just think.
It's not about expecting. She could do what Mike Pence did. She doesn't have to vote or do what he says. But the fact that she did, she's her own person in her own right, but she's not a leader. She's a follower. Okay. You see that in the way that she's okay. I'm going to follow Biden because this is the way the administration wants. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. 100%.
She doesn't have to do it. Okay. I mean, look at Dick Cheney and George Bush. They haven't talked to this day since they left office. They don't like each other. The Bushes and the Cheneys, they don't like each other, which is also the reason why I think the Bushes are staying out of this endorsement business. But Dick Cheney ran the second Bush administration. He ran that administration. Okay. He took control. Joe Biden was not like that. Mike Pence had some sort of good role. He ran Operation what was the COVID thing? Warp Speed. Okay. He was given in charge of things. Trump trusted him to manage certain aspects of the administration. Kamala Harris can't even get 2 astronauts home from space. She was put in charge of NASA. Okay. I mean, and Mike Pence was part of the Space Force deal. So he was a better vice president than Kamala Harris is. Michelle.
First of all, the other day had a total brain meltdown, and I totally forgot that Space Force was a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
I saw an actual proud parent of Space Force, and my brain melted for a second. I was like, wait a second,
it's a good show on Netflix. You should watch it.
Is that really a thing? What's it?
It's a good show. It's a show on Netflix too. You should go watch it. It's pretty good. It's with Steve Carell. It's hilarious.
Steve's funny anyway. I mean, everything he touches goes to gold.
Yeah.
But and as we're talking about the response and when it comes to FEMA, and as you had just said, Matt, Vice President Harris has, from what I have seen, been the most involved vice president that I can remember. The border czar, the Afghan withdrawal. She's proud to say that she was the tying vote breaker of
Inflation Reduction Act.
Thank you.
CHIPS.
All of that. So when you start to say that she's got a role, and when we talk about DeSantis not taking her call, again, right now, I don't think that was her call. She hasn't been involved with the response, the emergency response, and with the weather responsiveness. And then when she did interject herself, she tripped and stumbled, and she can't speak without a teleprompter, and she didn't remember that it was Tampa Bay. If you notice, she kind of pushed her nose into the weather channel, and she came in to do a round robin talk in there, and she couldn't even speak on that. So I'm kind of glad she stayed out of it when it comes to DeSantis. And I let DeSantis and Biden, because really Biden's still our president until January. Biden is still technically our sitting president. So he should be the one connecting with DeSantis. And DeSantis is the man. I all day long. And I don't know if you heard as well too. He was all about when Helene first hit. He wrote an executive order where he opened up all of the dumps 24/7, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to clean up all that debris because he knew that that other one may hit, the second one, the one that just hit yesterday, Milton, and in prepping for Milton. And we talk about the FEMA response and Kamala Harris and her. It really got me going, and this I'll save some of it for my rant too. But the whole bit when Helene hit, and she tried to go down and she tried to help. She came out and said that each person was getting $750 for basic needs, and then turned around and promised 175, what was it, 175, 189 million in the same, like within 24 hours to go to Lebanon. So we've got money to fund the wars, but we don't have money to fund Americans that are in an emergency right now. And it really irritates me.
And that's our next clip. And I just want to point out why I don't understand why she wants to be involved in this FEMA thing, because it's kind of a joke right now. I've never seen anyone try to run towards bad news and bad management. I guess it's because another hurricane's government. She wants to see, she can't figure it out. Does she want to run as an incumbent who's responsible for X? She only wants the good parts and the look of it. Or does she want to be a change agent, someone who's going to change something? Which, if you're going to be a change agent, when your party's in the White House, you have to kind of defer against something of your party, right? I'll never forget Mitt Romney in 2012. There was a question asked. I think it was the same Candy Crowley debate, and somebody stood up and said, "Mr. Romney, I'm worried you're going to be like George Bush." And he goes, "I'm not like George Bush. We're two different people." He even had to run away from somebody 4 years ago. If you're going to be a change agent in your party, you have to be defer against something that your party does. Otherwise, this kind of will be a Biden second term if you look at it this way. And then I'll make this last point. I don't think, actually, there's 2 points. I can't name a time in which a vice president was ever in charge of FEMA. If you were going to be on the same page, Biden and Harris had a good relationship, same page. If I was Biden and I was like, yeah, man, I really want Kamala to win. You know what? I kind of like the beach. I'll let Kamala run FEMA and make her look good. Like, if you're going to try to help somebody win, put the vice president in charge of FEMA. Instead, Joe Biden's assuming that. Okay, why does he assuming that? He's clearly a part-time president at this point, and I think part of it is he knows it's a good show and a good look for him, something he can write out on. All right, now we're going to do one last FEMA clip here. This is from the folks in North Carolina, going to Michelle's point on $750.
Literally, what is FEMA? So my daughter, whose house got completely wiped out, she has no flood insurance, meets with a FEMA person, applies for everything doesn't get the $750 that Kamala says that she's supposed to get, gets approved for $300 for personal items. What is that going to do? That's literally what she got. Her entire first floor is wiped out. We hauled everything off. It's gone. So what is FEMA? And being a mayor,
so they didn't even give her the full $750.
They didn't even give her $750. Denied the $750.
They gave her $300.
They gave her $300. That won't even cover what's in the refrigerator.
And I think the 750 things, I mean, they did the same thing to the folks in Maui after the fire in Hawaii. I'm glad they upped it from $600 from the folks in Hawaii, which has a higher cost of living, by the way, to the 750 in North Carolina. And then, like you said, Michelle, they go right around, they give 600 billion or whatever it was to Lebanon.
Yeah. And it really kind of irritates me because I got ratioed on Facebook. I got called out I had posted a picture of Kamala Harris's belt that costs $770, which is more than what these North Carolinians are getting. And then if they're even getting the $750, and then Zuckerberg and Facebook tried to tell me, well, it's missing context. Well, here's your context. I really wanted to turn around and just totally rage post and be that person and be like, all right, here, fact checkers, check this. But some people aren't even getting the $750, and it's supposed to be for basic needs. You guys saw what last Sunday I spent $314 on a family of 4 at the grocery store. That girl lost everything. She lost her bed. She lost, we talked about earlier with tampons, all the feminine hygiene products. You talk about the food in your fridge. That $300 that this girl got is not going to cover basic needs. And don't tell me and fact check me that is going to cover basic needs.
Yeah,
There's my rant early.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, look, last month the Congress added another $20 million to FEMA's short-term relief fund. So far, they still have 11 billion left. But to the clip, it's you get that much money. Why she only get $300? I mean, I don't know the circumstances of what and how maybe she did something wrong in the application. We don't know, but $300 is definitely not sufficient for the basic needs because, I mean, you lost everything. Now, FEMA came out and they're saying that one of the biggest things they're struggling right now with is not the storm, believe it or not, is actually the misinformation coming out, and that's what's hurting them the most. I mean, recently we heard talk about how most of the money is going to the border and the migrants. I looked it up, and according now, I'm going to tell you, most of the information I get is from Wall Street Journal and News Nation. So if you trust those sources, great. If not, then you probably don't trust what I say ever on this podcast. But basically, what I saw in there was that there's actually 2 separate pots for border management and national disasters. They didn't clarify how much percentage goes in each, so we don't know who gets most of the money. I'm hoping we get most of the money versus the migrants do, but there's 2 different pots. Now, to the misinformation point is, of course, they called a lot of things out coming from the right, which I think is a lot of information coming from the left that's very incorrect. That Kamala's been saying that's very not true. That's very much not true. But I mean, they talked about how Trump in Georgia said that Biden didn't even call Governor Kemp during Helena, and Brian Kemp said, "No, you're wrong. I got a call from Biden." And on the 750 thing, yeah, I mean, definitely 100% right on 750 is not enough for the basic needs because to cover what water supplies and like diapers, that's the basic need. But however, I believe they can give you up to $42,000 for other repairs. I'm not sure how long that process is. It's probably way too long of a process. So that's something we probably need to streamline. Trump made a good point saying that he made a good promise is that when he's president, he's going to get rid of all of this bureaucracy. It shouldn't take you 6 months to get your home repairs for a national disaster. It shouldn't. But we also have to remember that this is a state-led initiative. If we allow the federal government to come in and do that, we might get more red tape. Matt, what are your I really want to know what you think about the 750 and about the misinformation part coming out of it all.
So I think the misinformation part from both sides, as far as like, oh, FEMA's on the ground, FEMA's not on the ground. To me, it's like toddlers. It's okay. He's here. No, he's not here. You're supposed to be present in your child's life, right? Well, it's different than giving them a present. So what I mean by that is the people on the right, they see FEMA there, but they're not being proactive. Okay, that's the part. They're sitting in those hotels, they're twiddling thumbs. They've processed 300 people into hotels when there's 2 million people displaced. So that's where the right's coming from as far as like FEMA's not here. They're present as far as they're physically there, but they're not engaging. Okay, so the misinformation is a messaging problem from the Trump folks, and the left is eating at it. So that's the way I interpret that. As far as the big government, small government thing, yeah, I mean, if I lived in the utopia, world, and every state could take care of themselves. However, we don't live in that utopia right now. The onus is on the Democrats because, to Michelle's point, okay, you're literally the same week you're gonna spend, however many millions and billions to overseas folks to all these other countries, but not spend it on Americans. I travel around the country for work. I talk to people all the time, and that's their number one complaint when they talk about wasteful spending in Washington. They come up and they say, "Stop spending overseas. Stop spending on foreign stuff. Stop spend." They don't understand it because they look around the United States and they see we have our own problems, and this is just another sore thing to look at, that we have a major problem, and you're going to spend money to somewhere else rather than on Americans.
Well, so I'll push back on that. I mean, our deficit just reached $1.8 trillion, and based off the graph and numbers, most of that money is spent on older Americans in the United States. I think I'm not saying that how much we're spending in other countries is a good thing, but we need to focus on what we're spending the most at, which is these entitlement programs for young and old. I mean, that's where we need to be talking more about the spending. I get we're spending so much on overseas. Me personally,
Right.
I think America should have a footprint there, not a physical footprint, but should have a footprint in overseas affairs. Because if we're not going to do it, Russia and China will. And if they're that big of a threat, that both sides are saying they are, we need to be there.
So I agree. I'm just giving you the overview of what Americans think. Like, they get this sense that, hey, I understand we have a debt problem. Part of it's because we're spending it over there and we're not spending it here in the United States. Maybe if you invested it here in the United States, it would get better. That's not my personal opinion. That's just America's sense overall.
And maybe that's the fault of our elected officials. That's the fault of the people running for office. I forgot what the fallacy of that is, or the word for that is, but when something's going on over here, they're trying to make you look that way. But that's what they're doing right now, is that $1.8 trillion definitely did not all come from foreign aid spending. It did not. It came from entitlement programs. It came from these crazy stimulus checks. That's where that money came from. So I just think that we need to focus on the right things and what's really the problem here. Not defending democracy as
right. Like, we shouldn't have foreign lobbyists, especially like, here are the biggest foreign lobbyists that everyone can see in plain view: Vladimir Zelensky and Benjamin Netanyahu. And look, I support Israel, and in some cases I'm in favor of giving money to foreign governments. Right? America wouldn't exist if the French didn't give us money.
That's true.
At the same time, you have to take care of your country first. At the same time, so if you're going to invest here, and there's so much wasteful spending that you can just get rid of. I mean, we just saw, we should have played a clip of DEI stuff and FEMA. Why are we talking about equity and putting minorities ahead of lines in order to get whatever funding and supplies first? It should just be, look, hey, everyone needs water. Here's water. So whoever's here, go, take the water, go. It doesn't make any sense to me.
So I'll push back on that on that point too, and then Michelle, I promise you, I'll.
It's okay. She's in the middle, so she's hearing us go back and forth.
All I say to that is, so FEMA has a website where they can take it, if you will, with grain of salt or not, but they have a website where they kind of like bust rumors, and one of the rumors was that they're allowing migrants.
Information board.
There you go. Yeah, perfect.
Ministry of Disinformation.
Yeah.
Of Truth,
Yes.
right? Isn't that what they had?
But one of them was that they're letting migrants and people of color, whatever have you, skip the lines. And their big thing was, that's illegal. Constitutionally, we're not allowed to, as a federal agency, we're not allowed to show special treatment to a different group based on race, age, sexual orientation, things like that. Could they do it? They 100% could. They 100% could.
I want to push back on that. I'm going to stick my nose in here. I just watched their whole teams meeting that they had, the FEMA experts of their DEI purposes, where they had an entire discussion on the alphabet community and how they are disproportioned in emergency situations. And we need to start to focus on emergency responses to those types of communities over other communities, because they lack they lack the resources, which again, it goes back to that whole question of, well, aren't you guys as equal as we are? Not on a who comes first basis, but on a sort of self-reliance and on a self-reliance aspect of it. Take out your gender, whatever you call yourself, take out your color or whatever. It shouldn't. You should be there helping your neighbor. Plain and simple. That's just what it is you help your neighbor. You don't ask the person, oh, are you a Republican or Democrat? Oh, are you LGBTQIA? Or, oh, are you, your skin color, and then base their response on that. It shouldn't be. And I think it's silly that they even have that discussion. And we talk about the frivolous spending, and I would be the first thing I would cut would be DEI initiatives in the DEI departments.
Didn't earn it.
And
yeah, you're right.
And it's great that Jay even believes that the lawyers at FEMA have put this up on the website. But the people who are running FEMA are actually doing what Michelle's talking about in the team thing. So,
well, this is what I'll say to that. Let's say that when I believe that call happened, that's so unethical, but it's not illegal. Now, if they actually go and put into practice that, then that's when we need to be talking about the law. Now, and actually, and you guys tell me, but I want to know who was in that meeting. Was it actually the head honchos? Was it the administrator? Was it like the local managers? I would like to know. But
I'll have to find it, and
yeah,
I'll find it. And what I'll do is I'll find it and post it on our Twitter page.
Yeah,
on our X page.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're getting towards the end,
yeah,
which everyone knows what that means.
Rant and raves.
All right. I was gonna talk about the hurricane and no climate change for a rant and rave. However, I just was looking at, because it's Thursday night football, and if tonight the Niners and Seahawks are playing, and I'm finally number one in my fantasy league for a long while. It's been a while. I've had a couple dry seasons where I'm not number one. My rant and raves is about all the injuries now happening in fantasy football. They're all like dying. It's constant. Fantasy football apps should in place a rule that if your player gets injured and you're the starter, that team should have at least 24 hours to go on the waiver and pick up the backup if they're not already taken. I'm so tired of having to rush to my phone and keep up with it. Luckily, this year I've been lucky. I've gotten a couple good backups, but I think these apps need to update for the backup, especially running back positions. Oh my gosh. Okay, they need to update those more. I mean, Walker on the Seahawks was out for a while. He's playing tonight. I already got like 5 points. So that's good. That's my rant and rave is fantasy apps make it to where if the starter is out, the owner of that starter, if the backup's not already taken, automatically has 24 hours to pick that person up. Anyway, Michelle, your rant and rave.
Go sports balls.
Niners just got my guy Samuel just got a 76-yard pass. So I just got 20 points.
Who does Samuel play for? You said
the 49ers.
49ers.
I've got like 3 people in tonight. So
nice. Go team. Just go Pack go. If it's not the Packers, don't you know? If it's not the Packers, I'm not paying attention. But I was gonna say my rant and rave is being ratioed by Zuck. However, you had mentioned climate change, and it brought back up a news that they just closed Rock Island. It's a state park here in Wisconsin due to climate change. And what kind of climate change, you may ask? Well, an overinfestation of rodents. So mice have actually gotten into their historical buildings and chewed through wires and done all this. And the Historical Society, I believe, or whoever is up there, they just loaded it about 2 hours ago that due to climate change, they have to close it down. So we're getting mass rats due to climate change. And I think that's malarkey.
New York.
Jamin.
I would say that's a pretty good one. Climate change is something you talk about. It's so important, guys. It is real. Mine is a rant, kind of tongue in cheek, but also not tongue in cheek. I was kind of hoping you'd play this clip that Kamala had with, I think it was Call Me Daddy, of where she and the host, on the host is, but they said something along the lines of, name me one law. They're talking about abortion. Name me one law that restricts something on a man, like abortion does to a woman. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I could think at least 2. The draft only applies to men. And it's not really a law, but statistically, let's look at child support. I mean, statistically, the men are always obligated to pay that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but if you're talking about, oh, there's no laws that men made to regulate other men, actually there were. Military, which we could die in, and child support, which we can live under the bridge because we pay so much of it.
How
Michelle, you
about
have a
just
note on that.
every law ever restricts a human being for possibly anything? It's rules and regulations. So just laws in nature restrict people.
So I'm totally going to interject right here. And Javen, this is such an unpopular opinion. However, we had talked about abortion and things like that. I believe that if a man wants to give up their rights and a woman wants to go through with having a baby, I think it should be okay that a man gives up his rights. Now listen, hear me out. Now, if we're going to have abortions and things like that, where a man is not allowed to have the right to say no, because it's a woman's body, it's her choice. We have to carry the baby. We have to go through all of that. To your chagrin, I want to be able to allow a man to give up that right should that woman decide to go through with that pregnancy. So I know it's a very unpopular, and
I'm
know
with you
it's
there.
totally difference of
I
opinion,
agree with you.
but I think if a woman can go and have an abortion without the man, and because truly at the end of the day, what if a man wants that baby? What if the males that want to raise kids? I'm very, very lucky. I have a husband that is just, I love my husband so much. I am very, very blessed that I have a very hands-on husband that wants to be a dad and wants to be there for his kids. I don't think that if a woman wants to go and have an abortion, I think a man should have a right to be able to say, hey, I don't want that. And then they can work that out however they see fit. But at the same time, okay, fine. If she's going to, then she's going to have to support it and raise it as well. I mean, of course, we've got the other programs. We've got the help. There's all that help. Yeah. But without going totally back to the beginning of the hour when we fully talk.
I was about to say.
That's a big rant, and maybe we could talk about it another time.
Good. And who knows what the news cycle will do next week, folks. But we will see you guys next week on Coast to Coast Conversations. Have a great evening, everybody.